Uh, my name, Stephen George Morgan, commonly known as Spider. And I was with John Frost on Arnhem Bridge in his HQ company. Being a machine gunner, I was with John Frost most of the time. When I was 12 years old, I was in the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, cadets. This was before the war, 1937. And I quite enjoyed it. My father was proud of me being there because he was in the medical corps himself. And he was dead afraid that I was going to join the army as too young, which I promised him I'd never do, which is why I had to wait till I was 18 before I did join up. In the St. John's Ambulance Brigade, I took a course in firefighting and quite a number of other things. I was the fellow that was on demonstrations, that was lowered out of the roof on the ropes with the firemen and all the old. And anyway, as time went on, my father died when I was 15. Long before then, when the war started in 1940, at Dunkirk time, I immediately went to the police station and put my name down to join the Home Guards, which in those days, people used to pull their legs. We used to wear an armband, LDV, Local Defence Volunteers. But they used to say, look, duck and vanish. That was one of the things. But anyway, the time came, my father died, and the time came I joined the army, the Oxford Bucks. My mother was as proud and pleased because she wanted me. I wanted to be a soldier and she wanted me to be one. And of course, my father being dead, I did, on my due time, I joined the Oxford Bucks. Colchester, infantry training, offered to join the paras and they wanted soldiers. They collared me as quick as could be. And I eventually passed my parachuting tests and became a paratrooper. From there, I was lucky. I was taken or asked to go to Keevil in Wiltshire, where there was a squadron of Sterling bombers that were coming from bombing duties, and they were to be trained as glider tugs and dropping live paratroops, and they wanted experience. So I was lucky that I was there for 3 weeks, and I did 21 drops from Sterling bombers through that great big hole in the floor. I enjoyed myself. The weather was fine. Then I went back to the depot and immediately get put into John Frost's 2nd Parachute Battalion. And I was only there for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. I was in the machine gun platoon, headquarter company. And it was only there for 6 weeks. And we were sent abroad to the Battle of Arnhem, which lots of people have heard about. And, I actually got to the bridge on the first day. Nobody got there after that. We were cut off completely. 700 of us. And on the way into Arnhem Bridge from the drop zone, it was a matter of 6 miles. I weighed 8 stone 5. I was carrying 12 stone of my own equipment, plus a Vickers machine gun across my pack. And all my platoon were getting on a little bit in front, and there was me trying to keep up in the rear. In the end, a Bren gun carrier came along. I put the Vickers on there with all the boxes of ammunition I was carrying, and then I could move a bit. And I did gradually catch up with the leading platoon in A Company. We had a bit of a skirmish in as much as the Gronert twins were killed as we went under a railway bridge. Their captain, their lieutenant, his name was, same as bloke at the BC. He was a Canadian, but anyway, he got killed as well, which very few people who recall this story tell you about the Gronert twins dying together, but they don't tell you about their lieutenant who got killed. There was a sergeant there who got hit by a German bullet right in the wedding tackle. And he went to the first aid post, had a plaster put on it, came back to the platoon in half an hour. That's the sort of guts those men had. Anyway, eventually I got to Arnhem Bridge. There was 40 or 50 men there of a HQ company and A company. None of my officers, none of my NCOs were there. So I thought, well, where's these Germans got to? And there was none about. So I went on the bridge, walked down the bridge, and there was 2 German lorries there. I banged on the side of the lorries. Out came 2 Germans. I took them prisoner, marched them back and gave them over to the military police that were there. And then halfway down this slope was a school, the Van Stirrum School. There was lights on, so I thought, I'll have a look at that. Went in there, and there was youngsters, Dutch children with teachers, hymn singing, 8 o'clock at night, Sunday night. So I told them, would they take the children away because there was going to be a battle here? And they took them away, and in fact, a company, a large platoon of engineers moved into there. They defended that, Royal Engineers. Very good fighters they were too. There was no engineering to do. Give them a rifle and let them fight. So they did. They were very good. And I came back, and it all went quiet that night. The Germans don't like to fight at night. The British do. Anyway, we got down in these houses, went to sleep till morning. Had a perfect night's sleep on that Sunday night. On the Monday morning, they said, right, machine gunners, me, this way. And we moved up to the bridge. The guns were placed overlooking the river alongside the bridge in case Jerry came across. And I went the other end of the bridge with a man, Taffy Hellier, a Welshman, obviously. And he and I occupied 2 windows in this house. And when these tanks, or not tanks, they were not tanks, they were armoured cars, when they came across the bridge, we blew up the first 2 with Hawkins landmines, which is a grenade this size, on a piece of string. We waited till they were there, pulled the string across, put it under their wheels, and up they went. And they skewed across the road, 2 of them, and the others couldn't get by. So all these troops, there were lorry loads of infantry there, German infantry. They were trapped between our machine guns, and Taffy Hellier and I at the other end. And we had quite a good day there for an hour and a half, shooting rabbits. Yeah, when Taffy went up there later in the day to have a look, there were 71 of them led there. Taffy and I. Yeah, he was a good shot, so was I. That was the major battle on the Monday. From there, we went to other houses, and we were constantly being mortared by the Germans. And the Germans are very good at mortaring. They'll fire a mortar and get you first time, whereas the British have to put 2 or 3 ranging shots. The Germans didn't. You had to watch yourself carefully. If you heard one coming, get under cover. And regarding that, there was a sergeant in the mortar platoon, Sergeant Jackman. Now, we had a spare mortar barrel. It got no bipod or base plate. And we were being targeted by a German mortar from across the river. We sent an observer to tell us what was going on. And Sergeant Jackman put his toggle rope round him, round the barrel of the mortar, and held it like that, freehand. And this observer was saying, oh, left a bit, right a bit. And the third shot went smack on this German mortar, blew it to bits, all the crew as well. Of course, a big cheer went up. That was very good. It really was. But that was Sergeant Jackman in the mortar platoon. Lieutenant Woods was the mortar platoon officer, and the senior sergeant was a man of Russian descent, Kalikov. And they were talking together, close like that, and a German mortar bomb came, plonked straight between them, blew Woods to pieces, although his pieces were found and they're in the cemetery at used to be now. But Kalikov was severely injured, and they took him to the first aid post. And the story is that Kalikov, a Russian name, the Germans were very suspicious. They took him from Arnhem straight away back into Germany, put him in a German hospital, and he didn't get better. And they took him to another German, right inside Germany, miles away. They were keeping their eye on a Russian, as they thought. But he did die. And he was buried outside this hospital with 25 others, British troops. Monsell, Lieutenant Monsell, was my platoon officer. He's a little Irishman, the Royal Irish Fusiliers. A real broad-speaking little chap. And it amused me when we were in the swimming pool or river crossings, there was Monsell swimming, and he got a great big moustache, and he was swimming away. He looked like a walrus going across it. We laughed about that quite often. But he was a nice fella. He never bothered us. He trained us properly and all the rest of it. But there was one story towards the end of the battle, the last day of the battle. I was told, because we got no machine gun ammunition left or anything like that, when we had a casualty, that was it. We were one man down. The Germans could always put fresh troops in the line. And I mean, they only in the line for a couple of hours, and then they could put fresh troops in. But we were the same blokes who were fighting for 3 days without sleep. And they asked me and a couple of others to go with Lieutenant McDermott of 1 platoon, 3 platoon, A company. They were going to tackle a house on the other side of the bridge where there was no British troops. They were all Germans that side. We wanted that house. So we charged in. McDermott went in. His Batman went next. And I went next. And we went in the back door and up the stairs, and on the corner of the stairs, a half landing, Jerry opened the door and looked down the stairs and fired, knocked McDermott down. It cut him right across there with a machine gun fire. He died 2 or 3 days later. His Batman behind him was caught right across the stomach, and he went down. That left me to face the same German. Luckily, behind me was a Lance Corporal Dodds. He was also in the mortar platoon. By this, I mean the platoon's engineers, Remy, everybody was all mixed up. You just went to the officers or sergeants told you. And I went up the stairs, and Dodds behind me fired across the stairs, caught this German, knocked him down. So therefore I was dead lucky. I mean, I was straight into a German machine gun. But he fired at and killed the crew. And I got up the stairs as the German was wriggling inside the door. So I helped him on his way. And of course, by then, the rest of the troops were pouring in. Jerry ran away. Now, these Germans, they're good troops. Make no mistake, they're good soldiers. Of course, their officers, sergeant, round them up, and they come straight back at you. You always got that with the Germans. If you drive them out, or they'll come back straight at you, and you have a fierce fight on your hands, I'll tell you. But I went up to the top of this house, because it's always best to get up high in street fighting. Always get up high. You can fire downstairs. And 600 yards away up the road, past the Van Stirrum School, I saw a German setting up a machine gun on a tripod just 600 yards away. I thought, that's odd, because he must have been drunk, because he was putting the machine gun up. Every time he bent down, his hat fell off. He got a soft cap, no helmet, a soft cap. It fell off, and he'd pick it up, put it back on his head, carry on with the machine gun. I thought, hello, we're the target. I don't want him firing at me. I borrowed a Bren gun from the man next to me and gave him half a magazine, and that was the end of him. And the Germans did eventually get together and come back at us down the road, but they were firing Schmeusers, a short-range submachine gun. Some of us had got rifles, and we could pick them off before they got to us. And before they got to us, they disappeared because they were getting the worst of it. So that was that. Now, this was the very last day on the Wednesday. And because of the casualties we'd had, some of our blokes were being knocked over. So they said to us that we were to get out of there and go actually under the bridge, which I did, along with everybody else. And we all got across there. Nobody got shot going across there. And there I met Lieutenant Grayburn. He was in a company. He was three company commander, yeah. 3 battalion, platoon commander. And I'd never seen the man before. But when I met him, he got a bandage round his head, he got his arm in a sling, he got shrapnel in his back, and he got his knee bandaged. He was one hell of a man, he was. I mean, I saw him right at the end of the battle with his pistol in his left hand. He went up to a Tiger tank that was firing at us and tried to shoot the driver through the driver's slot, standing in front of a Tiger tank. I wouldn't have got near the damn thing, but that's what he did. He was that brave. He led attacks on the Germans who were trying to get us out from under the bridge. And in the end, I mean, one of our men, Wally Blackmore, he was hit on the shoulder and knocked him away from, he couldn't fight anymore, with a big clump of concrete under this bridge. The Germans were firing at that and knocking this concrete down at us. And funny enough, with Sid Blackmore, last year when I was in Arnhem, he just died because he survived in the end and got home. But he died, and we buried him in Arnhem Cemetery, used to be Cemetery, the Airborne Cemetery, last year while I was out there. Met his family and one thing and another. But that was how it went. Now, Grayburn and I were the last two standing. I was completely unwounded. He had been wounded with all these fighting he'd been doing with. And he said to me, "Come on, lad, it's time to go." So he said, "Across the road." I went across the road and I got there. But by then, he'd seen me across the road. The Germans had seen what was going on, and they fired a machine gun. And as Grayburn was in the middle of the road, he caught a blast of MG machine gun fire. And down he went. I was in cover, but I saw he was down there, and I shouted to him, and he, he said, "I'm dying." He said, get away, go back to the battalion if you can. He said, leave me. But I didn't. I crawled out to him. Now, I led alongside him and caught his hand, let him know he was fully conscious, but he was obviously dying. I led right alongside him, caught his hand, and he still kept on to me, get away, get back to the battalion. You can help at the battalion, you know. So he was an officer, and reluctantly, in the end, I did leave him while he was still alive. And even today, any day, I got a conscience about leaving a wounded comrade. But he was an officer. He give me a direct order, get away. So, but I've still got a conscience about it. And he was still alive when I actually left him. But he died, I don't know exactly how or when, but I'd gone away to get away, and he was still nominally alive, but he did die, of course, after that. And now I left there, crept through the ruins of these houses, and went down into a cellar. I thought I was by myself. I met 4 men there in this cellar. Sergeant Joy, Corporal Orris, not Horace, but Orris, who I didn't know. He'd only been with the platoon a couple of weeks before we went, so I knew nothing about him. Sergeant Joy I knew. There was a man there, a Scots bloke. I forget his name. And there was this young lad, and I say a young lad, he was only like me, from the Remy. Now, he wasn't a combat soldier, but he got a rifle with 40 rounds. And he followed me around like a puppy dog for 3 days. But he was very good because he would warn me, oh, on your right, Steve, there'd be a jerry coming out or whatever, left, right, or in front. And he warnings were good because I was in front of him, you see. And he did. He followed me for 3 days. And he was in that cellar. So we waited for night. And while we were in there, across the road where the 2nd Battalion headquarters had been, they'd been captured. But some voice shouted out, somebody hidden in the ruins there, gave our battle cry, Wahoo Mohammed! That's our battle cry. And that echoed all the way across. And we were in this cellar, the house was tumbled down, and the Germans came over the top of our house. Come out, Englanders, we will fight you. What with? I'd got a fighting knife, and that was the only weapon we got. No ammunition, no nothing. So we waited till dark, and then we crept out of this house. And we went, I got a mile away from the bridge. We all did, creeping. German patrols on our hands and knees, on our bellies, crawling. You know, it took us a long time. But we got there. There's a place called, in Arnhem, the Muses Sacrum. It's where they sing sacred music. And we got as far as that, which is more than a mile from the bridge. But it was getting daylight. The Hun sentries on some armoured cars up the road had seen us. We were starving for water, so they couldn't, it was terrible. But we were having a drink of water out of a radiator in the house. And of course, Jerry came down with 2 machine guns, pointed them. Englanders, come out. What do you do? They'd got the guns, we got a fighting knife. What do you do? We came out, and they were only 15-year-old Hitler Youth soldiers. 15 years old. Their officers were 18 at the most. And they respected us. We came out. They didn't ask us to put our hands up or didn't search us or anything. Now, they took us back down to the bridge to take us to their headquarters. Now, before this, a couple of days before this, I had been with a man called Sergeant Sidney Power from A Company. I'd been with him in an attack on a German house. And me not wanting to go the proper place upstairs as high as you can. I went right up the top of the stairs, 3 stories up. I went up there wasn't a German in sight. And then Sid, realising that they were getting the worst of it downstairs, he shouted to his troop to get out, and they went out. But I was upstairs with a house full of Germans, and he said, "Where's Steve? Where's Steve?" And somebody said, "Well, he's still..." Sid came back, firing his Sten gun, shouting to me, "Steve, get out, get out!" I went flying down the stairs and got out okay. Sid came across the road as well, and we were away from it. But while I was taken prisoner, they walked us down the road, we went past some bodies lying on the opposite side of the road, covered over and that. But Sergeant, I went to have a look, but the Jerrys pushed me back into line, And Sergeant Joy told me, "That one there is Sid Power. He was dead." I mean, Sid had saved my life. Sid lies in the airborne cemetery it used to be now. I had my photograph taken at his grave. This only this last year. I mean, that was another. I was dead lucky. People saved my life, and I saved theirs, and I never got touched, never got wounded. I had so many bayonet fights with the Hun, because we'd run out of ammunition. Absolutely right out. The only thing we could fight with was their bayonets, and which was quite something, actually. It's very desperate when you're down to bayonets. And anyway, I was taken to after that. Oh, they took us up the road past the Van Sturm School, and that German body, that German machine gunner, was still led there. There he was, led dead. I thought, good, Anyway, they took us into a church where it had obviously been used as a dressing station, because on the floor were dirty dressings, and they were all calico and linen, which the British used. The Germans always used paper, so I knew the British troops had been in there. Anyway, they did give me a dish of preserved fruit. That went down well. And I'd had no food for 3 days, and nothing to drink. Our tongues were, you just couldn't, it's terrible. But then they marched us back to the railway station at Ventnor, and we stayed there the night. They separated the NCOs from the troops. Corporals went with the all the NCOs. The lance corporals stayed with the privates. And the next morning, they gave us a big porcelain bowl with nothing in it, and a lump of bread, 300 grams of bread. I thought, at least we got some food. Little did I know that had got to last us 5 days. I thought it was 1 day's ration. But anyway, they put us in these trucks, 60 to a truck. And there's hardly room. You could just shuffle up, and 2 or 3 of you could lie down, and then you change over. So you like. Now, in that railway truck was a Royal Engineer, and he had been in a house in the wood yard, actually, and Major, their second in command, forget his name there. He came across the road to see that the troops were all right, dashed in. He was a gentleman, and they asked password, and he gave the password, but nobody heard it. He was too quiet. So this engineer fellow at the top of the stairs fired down with a Bren gun and killed him. Blue on blue, as they call it. Killed him stone dead. Major Wallace. And John Frost's particular friend, actually. And he went down, and this engineer was in this railway carriage we were travelling back into Germany. And of course, he got a couple of his mates with him, but he was inconsolable. He was, shattered. He got his head down. He never spoke. All for 5 days until we went down alongside the Rhine, and we had to shunt into corner places off the main tracks because the RAF and the Americans were strafing the trains in daylight. We travelled at night more than anything, but it took us 5 days, and I got to Limburg, a place called Limburg, where there was a prison camp. And 12A, that was the number of the camp. We were in there a few days. It was a transit camp. They took all the prisoners there, and then when there were spaces in proper prison camps, they took them. And then they put us aboard a train, 300 of us in 5 trucks, 60 to a truck. I mean, they'd only put 8 horses in there normally, but we were jammed tight, no water, nothing. When we stopped in a railway station, we used to shout to the French firemen or engine drivers who were working for the Germans, shout to them. We got a bloke or two who could speak French. Squirt the water. So they squirted the water on the roof. It came through the ventilators, and we were all there trying to get a drink. That's how that was for 5 days, till I got to 12A. And I was there a couple of, a week. And then it was my turn. They took us down the station, put us on the train, and for another 5 days, they took us right across Germany, almost to the Polish border, to Stalag 4B at a place called Mollberg. And we were in there a day or two, and then they picked out 20 of us and moved us to a deserted factory where they wired off a bit and got some bunks there. And we had to go to work. We worked from there. We were digging holes and bomb damage and all this sort of thing. And every day we had to go out to work. And one day on the Saturday, I had to go with and bury some Russian soldiers who'd been strafed by the Americans and were dead, 4 or 5 of them. We went up the road, buried them alongside the road, just dug a hole, chucked them in, that's how it was. And Germans walking wounded soldiers, stretchers and all, and they came past. So I asked the guards, what's going on? Oh, he said, the Russians broke through the German lines last night, and these are the casualties, and they're coming back. So I went back to camp, spoke to my mate, Jack Elliott from Sheffield. He was an older soldier than me, and a bit wiser perhaps. Told him what happened. I said, we better get away, Jack. I said, because the Russians are 10 miles up the road. We could hear their guns. And oh no, he said, we're going now. I went to the canteen and picked up our bread ration and a sharp knife. He went in the billets, got a couple of blankets, our own blankets, came out. We climbed on top of the toilet block, which the Germans are supposed to be clever. They built this toilet block right against the outside wires, right against. Mind you, it was only a very small compound. So Jack and I, on the roof, jumped over, broad daylight on a Friday evening, jumped over the wire. The German guards had run away because the Russians had been strafed there. The American airplanes had strafed them. And the guards had disappeared, so there was nobody to stop us. We went over the wire, broad daylight on the afternoon, and off we went. And, the long and the short of that is we met a German convoy up the road that had been strafed, machine gun. And we did manage to get a bit more food there. And then we went on, and we decided we would move at night, in the day and sleep at night. We could have go on the night because it was more cover. But in the area, we knew that there was one of these German execution squads, the Einsatz group, and they were called SS bloke. If they saw slightest bit of British uniform or Russian, they just pulled a gun and shoot it without, So we thought, well, we're not going to be mistaken for spies, so we'll walk in broad daylight. We kept it as clear as we could. We were on the loose for 4 days doing that. On one of the nights, we slept in a wood. Jack and I slept in a ditch in a wood. We could hear voices, and we could hear horses' harnesses and that rattling. There was some Hungarian cavalry guarding a lot of German, Russian prisoners. We slept in this ditch. During the night, I thought, Christ, what's going on? My blanket was being pulled from under me gently. There was one of these Russians had come across there trying to pinch my blanket. Of course, I clobbered him and away he went. And we were safe enough all night then. In the morning, we waited for them to move, and then we moved. It was on the loose 4 days, and we met a German officer coming down the road on a bicycle. Broad daylight, stopped him. He spoke English. We asked him, is there any British or American troops in the area? He said, yes, back at Torgau, just up the road. He was cycling away from it. Of course, we went towards it, and we met the Americans at Torgau. Torgau is on the River Elbe, and it's the one place in Germany where the Americans came up to the river, and the Russians came, and that is the first place where British, American, and Russian troops met. You cross the river, shake hands, all the rest of it, and that's the very first place. The bridges were blown, so Jack and I stopped a couple of German women going up the road on bicycles. They'd been ordered through a loudspeaker that if they got any weapons, they were to hand them in at the town hall. They had got a little Belgian pistol. It's only got 2 live rounds in it, but we took that. We wanted that. They went back off home. We pinched their bikes, of course. Jack and I carried these bicycles on these railway lines, touched the water, back up. We carried the bicycles across both the river and the canal. That was something, I'll tell you. Jack and I started to get away, but the Americans caught up with us again. We were behind the American lines then, and they caught up with us and all come with us, and they fed us showers, clean uniforms, American uniforms, because there was no British there. And then they took us back to a place called Naumburg, a few miles behind the lines. And I was at Naumburg, 3 weeks, a month later, when I heard Churchill's speech of declaring the war over. The American Red Cross came in, the women with the big trucks, donuts all round, radio on, dancing with the girls. That was the end of the war in Europe. And from there, I stayed there for several days because they'd got no transport for us. But then they took us back to Reims in France, flew us back, because Eisenhower wanted to talk with us, and he wanted to know about German atrocities on British or American troops particularly. But during the night, the first night I was there, we were sleeping outside, lovely weather under the apple trees and that on a great big American policeman came up to me, the snowdrops as they call them, big black fella. Hey fella, do you want to go home? I said, too bloody true, lead me, come with me. He took me and 20 others, took us to Leipzig Aerodrome, a few miles away. And there was a Sterling bomber, not a Sterling, a Lancaster, waiting for us. Of course, we put it aboard. I was in the bomb aimer's position for taking off, lead on my stomach. Up we went, after that, we were able to move back a bit, and sort of, I was in the co-pilot seat on my way to England. Lovely day. We flew over Eastbourne and then flew up the coast to Worthing, landed there. Of course, it was a grass airfield, but there was other planes coming in from the Baltic, American fortresses, full of ex-prisoners of war, bringing them home. And we went in there, and they opened the bomb doors, and all our kit bags fell out, and we'd wait. A waff would come along. Morgan, yeah, mate, off. Of course, arms round, a kiss or two, you know. It took us into the canteen there. And first thing, well, a cup of tea, of course. And we sat there, and they gave us a telegram form. We were to write to our home and let them know we were in England and we'd be home in a day or two. So that is what happened. A few days, 3 or 4 days we were there. They gave us a medical, teeth and eyes and free from infection, you know. And then they gave us a pass to come home. I went to London on transport provided. Got on the Paddington, came down to Oxford. First thing I saw approaching Whitney was this cockerel on top of Whitney St Mary's Church had been knocked off. That there was the cockerel was missing. Where's it gone? You know, but yeah, a glider had hit it. No, the tug had hit it. Pilots, 2 blokes aboard got killed. They crashed it out at Cogs. And I came up the road home. Now, in this telegram, I told my mother that while I was a prisoner, I had a dream night after night, 4 or 5 times a week. I said, and it was my mother's big steamed apple pie, apple pudding. I said, and you lift the pudding off the base and there's all the golden sugar and this, you know, I drooled over that. So my mother, quite an emotional. My sisters were working in the laundry. They was told that I'd gone by to go home. They left work, came with me, got home. I thought, well, you know, there's nobody about. Me mother's not about. What's happening, you know? Went in the kitchen and my mother said, quite an emotional, sit down, son. Never ask how I was or anything. Sit down. So I sat down. And of course, he went to the cooker. Out come this bloody grape on my plate, a huge one, you know. Lift it off. Oh, you know, drooling. The sugar going down, the golden syrup, you know. Of course, my sisters and my brother arrived by then. My young Debbie's dad, actually. And knife and fork, or spoon and fork. And we all tucked into this. But, you know, in all those years, my mother never asked me how I was, what had happened, that I'd been ill-treated or anything. She was so pleased to get me home. And it was quite unemotional. Oh, she's been dead a long time now. My father had been dead years by then. And that was my homecoming from prisoner of war. Anyway, after a couple of days, the army sent me a telegram. Go to White Knights Park in Reading to have a medical. So I went in, had the medical, and the doctor said to me, he said, you're not going home, lad. He said, you're going straight in hospital. And they suspected I'd got TB, which I had in the stomach anyway. I didn't get it in the lungs, I had it in the stomach. And so I was in hospital in Reading and then Oxford until Christmas. That was a matter of 6 months. They moved me to Oxford so that my people could visit me rather than go to Reading. And I was there till Christmas. Then they let me out and I went home. And they said, you'll never go back to the army. You're being discharged. So by February the following year, 46, I was out of the army on 100% pension, £2, 5 shillings a week. And which was, in those days, £2 was £2. Now it's peanuts. And that's how it came about. left the army. I had 6 months leave where I stayed at home and lounged about, went down the pub a time or two and all that, picked up with a girl, you see, silly as sheep I was, and got married, had a daughter, and the story is then I worked at the press steel company in Oxford for 27 years. I remained there long enough to get my gold watch. I volunteered for redundancy, and I had my redundancy money, £2,300. That was for after 27 years' work. That is what they gave me. The army gave me about £40 back pay, which I hadn't had while I was a prisoner. And of course, well, that's the end of the story as far as it goes. I got married and had my daughter and went to work, and I didn't, well, that was it. I was back home. As I say, I wasn't going to be the man who stood against the bar telling everybody I did this, I did that. I said I didn't even drink in those days anyway. But I just kept going to work. And
when did you start going back to Arnhem then for the?
Oh, it was.
How long was it before?
I went the following year. I took my wife as she was then, my first wife. She's still alive. She lives in Clanfield, just the other side of Brighton. And she and I went back there in 1949, a couple of years after the war. And I was amazed. I thought the Dutch people, because we'd gone there, hadn't liberated them. Lots of them got killed. They were all driven out of Arnhem, and they starved that winter. It was a cold winter. They were not allowed any food. Germans didn't allow food into the areas where they were. They were living on what they could find in the gutters or rubbish bins or anything. 22,000 of them died that winter, the starvation winter. And I thought, we're not going to get a very good reception. But they loved us. Come and Liz, come to my house. You come. Don't worry about that. You come and stay with us and stay as long as you like, And funny enough, the Airborne Forces Security Fund, who were running it, had given us all a box of food, almost like a Red Cross box, to give to our Dutch hosts. They looked at it. They laughed their head off. I mean, they were living 2 years after the war. They were living on what they'd been living on before the war. In England, of course, we were still on rations. They said, oh, take it home with you. We don't want it, come and have whatever, lovely meals. And then, they weren't starving. We were in England. But that's when I first went back. And then I went back with a couple of years later, I went with my mother. I took my mother to have a look at it. Later on, I took my daughter, because you couldn't take a child until they were 14. So as time went on, I took my daughter to see what would happen. And then I didn't go for years and years until Debbie got on 7 years ago. What's this Arnhem business, Kidnapped me from hospital. First time I'd seen Debbie for donkey's years. She and Johnny came to Grimsby and was going to take me home, you see. Mm-hmm. So we got in the car. I said, Debbie, Waltham is only 5 minutes from Grimsby. I said, we've been travelling an hour. What's going on? You're not going back there, she said. You're coming with us. And I came here. I slept in that corner there for a month on a bed. And then we found where a place for me to go, Waltham. And that was it. Not at Waltham, up the road here. And I've been here ever since, three years or so. Debbie's well, you know how it goes with Debbie and I, and Johnny. Wonderful. They've looked after me no end. Debbie does all my secretarial work and emails, and which I don't understand a bit about. I don't need to. And that really brings the story up to date, shall we say.